So welcome everyone. This is the National Girls Collaborative Project National Webinar, Taking Environmental Action with Youth, Helping Our Oceans One Piece of Trash at a Time. And my name is Marissa Garcia. I am here with the National Girls Collaborative Project. I'm gonna kick us off with just a little bit of information about what we at NGCP do. The vision of the National Girls Collaborative Project is to support and create science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, experiences that are as diverse as the world we live in. To do this, NGCP connects, creates, and collaborates with a network of advocates to promote equity and transform STEM for girls and all youth. NGCP exists because today's STEM experiences continue to lack diversity. Many young people do not identify with the field. To create change, our work empowers providers, educators, leaders, and youth themselves. Next slide, please. NGCP believes STEM skills can be acquired by anyone and fostered in everyone. Our initiatives build confidence and create a community of lifelong STEM activators. Through the power of collaboration, we spark curiosity and develop a passion for STEM. We share resources and solutions with a coalition of leaders, and via our website, newsletters, online databases, social media, and webinars like this one. NGCP also strengthens the capacity of programs by producing and sharing exemplary practices, research, and program models. When programs are stronger and more sustainable, girls and youth are better served. We distribute these resources in accessible formats such as train the trainer programs, partnerships, and online platforms. And finally, we leverage our network of girl-serving STEM programs, advocates, and youth so that together we can create the tipping point for gender equity in STEM. Next slide, please. The National Girls Collaborative Project engages in many activities virtually and nationally, as well as through local collaboratives. NGCP partners with organizations to scale and deliver content such as the Leap into Science National Network in partnership with the Franklin Institute, and the Million Girls Moonshot in partnership with STEM Next and the Mott After School State Networks, serving hundreds of educators via large local networks. NGCP is working with Lyda Hill Philanthropies and has launched the If Then Collection, a digital library housing photos, videos, and other media of women in STEM fields. These media are available at no cost. NGCP also hosts the Girls Advisory Board. The Girls Advisory Board helps to review and provide feedback on current National Girls Collaborative Project initiatives and assist in informing the future direction of the NGCP. NGCP manages the Connectory, the largest national database of STEM opportunities. The Connectory also provides a way for program providers to connect and collaborate with each other. FabFems is an international database of female role models from many STEM fields. They are passionate about the work they do and are ready to connect with programs to spark girls' interests. We offer regular webinars such as this one, focused on research and exemplary practices to help our network grow and thrive. Locally, state collaborative leadership teams offer convenings, providing professional development, mini grants for local projects when funding is available, as well as distribute their own regular newsletters spotlighting local resources. Next slide, please. The National Girls Collaborative Project has been partially funded by the National Science Foundation since 2002. We began as the Northwest Girls Collaborative Project focused on Washington and Oregon. And then as we presented our model to others, we were invited to expand across the United States. While NGCP programs and partners are located in every state, we have 33 collaboratives serving 41 states, facilitating collaboration between 42,500 organizations who serve 20.2 million girls and 10 million boys. And with that, we'll go to the next slide. And I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers today. We are joined by two fantastic women. First, we have Veronica Padula. Veronica is a born and raised Jersey girl. She earned her undergraduate degree in ecology, evolution, and environmental biology from Columbia University in New York. She discovered her passion for wildlife research during the summer between her junior and senior years, when she was a research intern for Wildlife Trust, investigating the overall health of black-crowned night herons living in New York Harbor. Her undergrad mentor offered her a position on a project in Alaska the following year, and although she had never really considered Alaska before, she was ready for adventure and accepted the offer. It was perhaps the best decision she could have made because she has not left Alaska since. In her 10 years since moving to Alaska, Veronica has earned her master's degree in fisheries and is currently pursuing her PhD. Her PhD research investigates the impacts of plastic marine debris on food webs in the Bering Sea. She currently works for the Aleut Community of St. Paul Island Ecosystem Conservation Office, where she helps coordinate research and science programs for students. She believes that anyone can be a scientist, and she hopes that by spreading her love and passion for all things science, she can make the field more accessible to everyone. And we are also thrilled to be joined by Caroline Nickerson. Caroline is a senior program director at SciStarter, where she manages the Citizen Science Month program. SciStarter's corporate volunteer programs and other programmatic and outreach efforts, including working with SciStarter's syndicated blog network, which encompasses the Science Connected, Discover Magazine, and SciStarter platforms. Caroline spends her day helping educators, library staff, community leaders, and volunteers from all walks of life do real science. She is a Master of Public Policy graduate from American University, where she was a Riley Environmental Policy Scholar and is a current PhD student at the University of Florida. She also works with the UFVA Bioethics Unit, the Christensen Project, Florida Community Innovation, and the Commission on Local Debates. She was the 2019 Cherry Blossom Princess representing the state of Florida and the Grand Prize Scholarship winner at Miss Earth USA 2021 as Miss Louisiana Earth. So thank you, Caroline and Veronica, for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you here. We're going to move forward, and I'll just let you know, today's first speaker, Veronica, is going to share her experience working with youth to tackle coastal cleanup at a very local level and a very community-based level in the community of St. Paul Island. So go ahead and take it away, Veronica.
Awesome. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. And I am super excited to be here with you all. I'm going to talk about tackling marine debris on St. Paul Island, Alaska. And I just want to sort of make some connections about how I ended up working for and with St. Paul, because my research focuses in on marine debris and its impacts to ecosystems. It eventually led me to St. Paul because St. Paul gets heavily impacted by things like marine debris. And so I get to sort of work with this great community and have the privilege of working with youth there. And it's really wonderful because the kids on St. Paul Island care really deeply about keeping their homes safe and clean for their community, both the human and the wildlife components of their community. So next slide, please. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so where is St. Paul Island exactly? It's located off the western coast of mainland Alaska in the middle of the Bering Sea. So if you are, say, in Florida, you're about as far away in like the US as you can be from St. Paul. And it's not a very big island. It's about 40 square miles and about 400 people call the island home. Me personally, I get to have the privilege of calling St. Paul my second home. I'm based mostly out of Anchorage, but spend a lot of time out there with the kids and the community. It's a really beautiful place. It's super, super special. It's home to lots of very special wildlife, especially seals and seabirds. And of course, I'm particularly partial to the seabirds that live on St. Paul, mostly just because birds. But because of where St. Paul Island is located in the middle of the Bering Sea, the waters surrounding the island are actually influenced by various ocean currents. If you kind of squint a little bit and look at the smaller map of Alaska and Russia's kind of next to each other, you can see that there is this chain of islands that goes down. That's the Aleutian Island chain. And right under that is the North Pacific Ocean, right? And so the North Pacific has a giant oceanic current that's a gyre. It sort of moves circularly. And as it's moving north, heading towards Alaska, it actually sort of breaks off and heads up and then down the island chain and then up around again towards St. Paul. And it's bringing lots of things to the island, including lots of marine debris. And it gets pushed up on the shorelines and has a high probability of just sticking around on St. Paul. Now, considering we have so much rich and awesome wildlife calling St. Paul home, having this marine debris on the shorelines and in the waters around the island poses a great risk to them. For example, seals can get entangled in fishing nets and packing bands, and seabirds are at risk of mistaking small pieces of plastic for food and consuming them. I've also seen small pieces of plastic, like broken down line, in the seabirds' nests, which is also kind of sad. Next slide, please. So what can we do to prevent the harm that marine debris might cause to the environment? One of the things that the youth regularly do on St. Paul Island is clean up where they can and when they can. We've been working with youth for many years now to teach them about the marine debris issue, the negative impacts marine debris has on the environment, wildlife, and human health, and what they can do to help battle this crisis. Because the students get access to a lot of really awesome scientists and learn from them. They haven't just learned to, clean up the garbage on their shorelines. They actually learn about microplastics in food webs, and they learn about toxicology. They have this bigger sense of why we care about the marine debris issue so much, because it's not just about trash on a shoreline. Our marine debris cleanups are always, though, like a really important component in those lessons. It helps us get outside and enjoy the ocean and help the planet all at the same time. I actually, so I took this picture from this summer when we did marine debris camp. And this day looks a little chilly. It could be a little cold on St. Paul, even in the summertime, but we had one day that was like sunny and beautiful, and it was about 60 degrees, which in Alaska is like hot. And the kids, they got out, we did some cleanup, and then they went swimming, and we got to do all the things at the same time and associate what might be sort of a really big crisis issue with doing good things and also having fun. And I really, I envy them for being so brave to go into the ocean that's very, very cold, but man, nothing stops them. Next slide, please. And so this is a picture from another cleanup we conducted a couple of years ago. And when the youth did this cleanup, they removed several hundred pounds of debris from the beach that's just down the street from their school. It's a group effort. It takes time, it takes some energy, but everybody is always game to do it and play their part and do good things for the planet. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I wanted to sort of talk about in terms of how we do marine debris cleanups on St. Paul Island in comparison to maybe other parts of the coastlines in the lower 48 is that we're sort of subject to different kinds of debris than you might see in your home. So one of the big things is fishing nets and line and buoys, huge fishing nets and lines and buoys, like ones that might be hundreds or thousands of pounds in one single net. That's because in the Bering Sea, we have a very active fishery. We have pollock fishery, which uses trawl nets, which is what the girl in this picture is trying to remove from the sand. We have the crab industry, which uses crab pots that can get lost at sea and act as ghost fishing mechanisms, which can be pretty harmful to the environment as well. And things like this, I'm showing one person cutting a piece of the net, but it actually took like 5 people to remove this net because it was buried in the sand and very heavy. It's a lot of work, but it's a big payoff in the end. Next slide, please. And just more evidence of how big these ropes and these lines can be. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 people trying to remove that one giant rope that got wrapped around driftwood. And this isn't youth, but I just wanted to give an example of how big some of this debris can be on St. Paul. This picture was taken during our 2019 marine debris cleanup. And in that span of 10 days that they did their cleanup, this team was able to remove over 20,000 pounds of debris from St. Paul's shorelines. And it might be hard to imagine what 20,000 pounds of marine debris might look like. Trust me, it's a lot. We faced some issues in terms of logistics in getting that debris off St. Paul Island itself and to, say, a landfill to a recycling facility. So our logistics look a little bit different, but it's really important to do that first step in terms of getting it off the shoreline itself, because then we don't risk it going back into the ocean or animals getting entangled in it or it breaking down and becoming microplastics. So we really focus on this first step to make sure that we're doing our part. Next slide, please. And then one of the other cool things I've gotten to do with youth this year is go to other places in Alaska and do marine debris cleanups there. So that is one of the girls from St. Paul Island helping remove debris on Kodiak Island, which is a little bit south and east of St. Paul. It's really important to clean up everywhere because A, we're helping the planet in general, the ocean in general, but B, a lot of this debris, once it hits the shoreline, sometimes is at risk of being pushed back or brought back into the ocean through like high storms and things like that, and then catching the currents and moving to places like St. Paul. So if we get it out at Kodiak or if we get it out at St. Paul, great, we're doing our part and we're protecting the environment. This is also another net that got caught around a tree and I think it took them like 2 hours to remove this net. It was insane. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. Hopefully it gave you an idea of sort of the good things that the kids on St. Paul get to do in terms of protecting the environment. I wanted to end on this picture, which I find really beautiful and charming. This is actually me and the girl from St. Paul on the shorelines in Kodiak. It was really a beautiful day. It was a beautiful trip. But I just wanted this as a reminder of, the beautiful parts of the world that we protect when we engage in environmental stewardship. We're doing it for things like this, places like this that are really special and unique and all important in terms of the Earth's ecosystem overall. So hopefully y'all can find your opportunities in your own home to clean up, to be environmental stewards, and do your part to protect the planet. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Veronica. One thing I really loved in what you said was helping kids and just anyone understand that cleaning up where you can and when you can is a simple way that you can kind of get started and taking environmental action in your community. And I think that is, it's just a really helpful way to think about it, because if you just have, a trash bag along with you when you go out for a walk or anything like that, you're helping to clean up our Earth. And that's just, one small way to really make an impact. So we will have time for questions for Veronica towards the end, but it's my pleasure now to kind of transition us into Caroline's section of today's presentation. So we just took with Veronica a really kind of specific local look at a more isolated region of the world and how coastal cleanup is done in that area and for what reasons and what kinds of cleanup. And Caroline's now going to give us an insight into how anyone can encourage environmental action and take environmental action through citizen science, and how coastal cleanup efforts stretch far beyond coastlines. Even if you're in a landlocked area, there are things you can do to celebrate Coastal Cleanup Month to help this marine debris issue. So Caroline, take it away.
Thank you, Marissa, and thank you, Kelly and Veronica, as well, for the work you do. So I actually have with me my trusty Garbo grabber, because we're gonna, at the end of my presentation, get outside a little bit, and you're gonna go collect some debris with me. And I have my little container to put it in. I've got a net right here. So you'll see all of that later. But first, I just wanted to wish you all a happy Coastal Cleanup Month. In reality, isn't every month Coastal Cleanup Month, right, in our world? And also, as you can see on the slide, SciStarter's social media handles there, at SciStarter. We're on pretty much every platform, even TikTok these days. So if you have an idea during this presentation, or you end up trying citizen science yourself this afternoon, or whatever time zone you're in, and you want to share it with us, please tag us on social media. We'd love to celebrate you and the difference you're making. But we'll go to the next slide. Yes, and that is me out in the world. I was on the beach in my hometown of Indian Harbor Beach, Florida, and I was Miss Louisiana Earth. And I did a lot of coastal cleanups and cleanups anywhere in the world, really. I do them in urban areas. I would do them in suburban areas. I would do them in college towns like I'm in right now in Gainesville, Florida. So you really can do cleanups to make a difference anywhere in the world, just like Marissa said, on the coast, off the coast, in a subdivision, right outside your apartment, wherever you happen to be, you can engage in a cleanup, and you can also do citizen science. So we'll go to the next slide. So really quickly, I wanted to start off with a quick intro as to what citizen science is. So millions of people enjoy science and nature. You all probably count yourselves in this group. Maybe you really love going outside, or you love birds and butterflies. Perhaps you're intrigued by how the brain works and you wish you understood it better. Or if you've ever looked up at the night sky and tried to spot the Big Dipper, then you are in good company. There are millions of people just like you who are curious about the world around them. So we'll go to the next slide. And the good news is thousands of scientists need volunteers. One thing we always say at SciStarter is scientists don't have enough eyes, ears, and perspectives to know everything there is to know, to understand everything that needs to be understood, to answer every question that needs to be answered. So that's why you come in as their collaborators. No matter how old you are, where you are in the world, what level of experience you have, you can volunteer and help researchers understand the world across all sorts of different disciplines, everything from astronomy to phenology, which is the study of seasons, to different health-related disciplines like understanding Alzheimer's disease, even zoology. You can help zoologists do their research, and the list goes on. If there's a science for something, there's a way that you can meaningfully engage as a citizen scientist volunteer. And we'll go to the next slide. But sometimes they can't find each other. So the scientists who need your help can't find people like you who are passionate and willing to make a difference and willing to volunteer their time to collect data or analyze data to better understand the world. That's where SciStarter comes in. We'll go to the next slide. We connect them. We connect you to the real science that you can do. And we connect researchers and scientists to volunteer communities. So SciStarter is really that bridge that allows you to discover different opportunities to turn your curiosity about the world into real scientific impact. We'll go to the next slide. So what is citizen science? Ultimately, citizen science is a collaboration between scientists and those of us who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. And you participate in citizen science whenever you do something to move science forward. This can be collecting data about the world, so taking pictures of different plants and animals to help scientists understand where their populations might be doing well and where they might be in trouble. This can be playing an online game to help researchers understand Alzheimer's disease. There's a game called Stall Catchers that you can discover on SciStarter, where by playing it, you're actually making annotations of blood vessels to help researchers test different treatments related to Alzheimer's. And the list goes on and on. Whenever you volunteer for science, you're doing citizen science. So most often, citizen science is volunteer work that moves science forward. Sometimes citizen scientists are paid, but most of the opportunities that you'll discover on SciStarter, for the most part, you don't need any special equipment. If you need certain tools, the project will tell you. But a lot of projects you can do just with a smartphone or just with a data sheet. Really quickly, I'll give another example of a population monitoring project. The Great Sunflower Project, it was originally with sunflowers, but they've expanded to all sorts of different flowering plants. You can participate in that project just by picking a flowering plant, getting a data sheet out, and recording the number of pollinators that happen to visit that plant. By doing that, you help researchers understand globally where pollinators might be doing well and where they might need some help. And that's really important for our food supply, right? Pollinators help create the food we eat. So just another example of why citizen science matters and why it's important, because scientists can't be out there, this small research team can't observe every flowering plant out into the world. We're so much stronger when we collaborate, when we work together to understand the big world around us. And we'll go to the next slide. And we have a short video created by our friends at Arizona State University and at SciStarter to explain very briefly what citizen science is. So I'll let them go ahead and play it.
Did you know that people just like you are shaping science and their future through small but important actions? That's right. You don't need a lab coat. You don't need a science degree. We're not talking about kids' chemistry kits or build a rocket activities. We're talking about real science we can do together. How can I do that, you might be wondering? The answer is easy. Become a citizen scientist. Citizen science is all about people like you and me getting involved in things that matter to us, like the environment, our health, oceans, and even space. Science needs more eyes, ears, and perspectives than any single scientist possesses.
Together, we get to make discoveries. We can make a difference by making and sharing our observations, analyzing data, or even playing a game to solve a problem. Want to learn more about citizen science, a movement that's sweeping the globe? You're in the right place. There's a lot of great material here to get you started and help you find, join, and participate in projects through scistarter.org. Visit the SciStarter website to begin exploring the possibilities of scientific participation. And create a personal account to receive project suggestions tailored especially for you. Together with SciStarter, we can all play a part in scientific research that can change the world for the better.
So there it is in a nutshell. That's how you explore SciStarter. So let's go to the next slide. Really quickly, as we mentioned, most often you're collecting or analyzing data, but you can be involved in citizen science from every step of the process. So you could come up with your own research question, design a protocol, which is just a set of instructions, a data collection method, get other people out there to help you with your research, interpret that data, and come to some conclusions and disseminate those out into the world. So you can create your own research project too. There are no limits. I just think it's really cool that there are existing research projects that you can discover on SciStarter to do real science and to make a difference and be part of global efforts and some hyperlocal efforts. I saw in the chat that Elizabeth said she does mudflat field trips where students become citizen scientists by looking at different salinity and temperatures in the mud to help biologists in the area. That's an example of a hyperlocal citizen science project. So you can do projects that pertain, just to your community, or that are part of a global effort, or both. That's the beauty of all this. We can understand questions that are close to home and questions that impact people all over the world. We'll go to the next slide. So there's one link in particular. So I encourage you to click around SciStarter. There are thousands of opportunities for you to discover. But if you take away only one link from this presentation, I recommend this one because the featured project for today that I'm talking about, Debris Tracker, is featured on this list that I made for you. And I also put up some other citizen science projects that pertain to water and the coast that I thought you might enjoy. So if you only take away one link from today, that's the link you want. There's also a training on there where you can earn the badge that's showcased on this slide. And you can put it on your LinkedIn or get some bragging rights. It's for people of all ages. So definitely recommend doing that training and exploring that list. And if you have little ones at home, remember, if they're 13 or under, we recommend that you help them use SciStarter. But you can also do citizen science on your own as an adult too. It's for people of all ages. So we'll go to the next slide. So that's the main website that you'll see thousands of different opportunities for you to explore, but we recognize that can be a little overwhelming. So we just have one opportunity showcased today. So we'll go to the next slide. And that's the project finder. I know that there are people of all ages on here, and you saw that in the video that you can search for different projects. So you can also search by age group and by topic. So if you really dig astronomy, there are astronomy projects you can find on here. We'll go to the next slide. And your dashboard. So I also encourage all of you to make SciStarter accounts so you can keep track of the projects you're joining, including the project you're going to join today, which is Debris Tracker. And if you ever need volunteer service hours, or you just want to look back and evaluate your collective impact, what you've accomplished, that can all live in your dashboard. Because when you find a project on SciStarter, including the Debris Tracker project today, you usually go somewhere else to participate. But for projects that, every project you join from SciStarter, it's recorded here, and some of them you can track your contributions if they're SciStarter affiliates. We'll go to the next slide. And we also had an education page. I wanted to give a quick shout out before I got to our featured project. You can find projects by grade level here, and they're not limited to grade level. I still do the Great Sunflower Project on my own as a 27-year-old to monitor pollinator populations. but that could definitely be useful for you. We'll go to the next slide. And remember, you can do citizen science from anywhere. You can do it from your couch. You can do it in your backyard. You can do it on your sidewalk in an urban area. You can do citizen science anywhere, including the schoolyard, for example. We'll go to the next slide. And now we have a quick video about the debris tracker project. So we'll go ahead and cue it up.
We're so excited you're interested in Marine Debris Tracker. My name is Catherine Youngblood, and I'm a research engineer with Jan Beck Research Group at the University of Georgia New Materials Institute. We study upstream solutions to ocean plastic pollution.
With an estimated 8 million metric tons of plastic entering our ocean ecosystems every year and having devastating effects on ocean organisms that accidentally consume it, this is a problem that's growing bigger every year. We're passionate about preventing plastic pollution in our oceans and waterways, which is why we created the Marine Debris Tracker app with help from NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, almost 8 years ago. With the Marine Debris Tracker app, thousands of citizen scientists from countries around the world have tracked over 1.5 million items of litter so far. Citizen scientists just like you are helping us create a bigger picture of the plastic pollution problem by tracking trash wherever you are, in cities, near rivers, out in the mountains, or cleaning up a beach.
Thank you for tracking and for helping to protect our oceans and waterways around the world. We're happy to have you on board.
Awesome. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So you can find that project, like we said earlier, on the list that we created specifically for today's event. So if you want to go ahead and get that queued up, you can open it on your phone too. So you can download the Debris Tracker app. And even though the app is called Marine Debris Tracker, I'm calling it Debris Tracker because they also encourage people to participate in places where the ocean isn't, like Kansas, because they could track patterns of debris through their map in the app from Kansas to the coast, for example, or from any country in the world. And try to see our plastic bottle caps, making their way from this particular area out to the ocean. Or, for example, cigarette butts are another thing that you can track in the Debris Tracker app. The weirdest thing I've ever recorded in the app is I found an abandoned tire at my local park, and I logged it in Debris Tracker. It was a very large piece of debris, but I logged it in there, and I was able to safely dispose of it to make my community cleaner. So we'll go to the next slide. So that's the mission, right? It's empowering you to fight plastic pollution by recording the litter you see in your community. And we'll go to the next slide. So your task today is we're fighting plastic pollution and other types of debris together by downloading this Debris Tracker app. And we're going to help identify hotspots of litter and plastic pollution to help fight for upstream solutions. And for those of you who are data nerds, you can actually go to the Debris Tracker website and download data from the app. It's been de-identified to protect privacy, but you can do some of your own analysis if you have particular research questions, in addition to the analysis that's being done by researchers at the University of Georgia, National Geographic, and other places. We'll go to the next slide really quick. So that's an example. That's what it'll look like when you're out in the wild. I'm actually about to switch to a demo on my phone in just a sec, but I want to go one more slide. So this is just an example of the power of data that you'll see, right? These are all observations on the map, and you can zoom in and look for closer patterns. We'll go to the next slide. And that's that list. I just wanted to mention, throw it in there one more time. Your last, not your last chance, but last chance before I go out and do my demo. One more slide. And when you click Start Tracking, I recommend using the NOAA list. A lot of other organizations have added lists, but NOAA, I would say, is the broadest. It has the most types of debris on there. But for example, there are different communities that have done different calls to action, like North Carolina has their own list, through NC State, and so on and so forth. But if you're from wherever you are in the world, you should be able to use the NOAA list to track some meaningful things. And we'll go one more slide. At the time, so these slides I actually sourced from Catherine Youngblood from an event we did together last year. But at the time, about a year ago, there were over 2.5 million observations on the app. I think there have been even more since then. And then Kelly, if you want to stop sharing, I'm going to start sharing on my phone. And I'm going to leave my computer on. I have joined the audio on my phone, my friends. I'm going to share my screen. Let's do this. Microphone is on. Start broadcast. Woo! All right, we're in it. And I'm going to go to the Debris Tracker app. So I already logged in, but you all could, we recommend, because they're undergoing some maintenance right now, typically you can log in through SciStarter, but we recommend just making your account on Debris Tracker with the same email address you used to make your SciStarter account. In a few weeks, everything will track seamlessly on your dashboard. But I'm going to do a quick track session. And I already selected the NOAA list. I recommend you all select the NOAA list too. Let's see. What's something, so you can also do this after the fact. So let's say you go out tracking in the morning and you come back later and you record, in my community, I found, this many plastic utensils, this many straws, this many balloons. You can see there's a lot of variety here. I have found, weirdly, in Gainesville, Florida, a lot of disposable cigarette lighters. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. So let's add a few. I have 4 items in there. I'm not going to submit this because this is just demo data, but I would click continue if I wanted to submit it. There I am at the University of Florida's campus where I currently am. And then I could upload my session and send it in. So that just showcases the power of Debris Tracker. And when I collect litter, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And now I'm going to turn my video on. So there I am, my selfie. I'm going to flip it around so I can show you what I typically use. So I typically use my this net, but you could use any sort of bag. I also typically use a grabber when I pick up debris, just for safety reasons. If you don't have access to a grabber, that's totally okay. You see, I'm going to pick up this pin right here. Let's pretend it's a piece of debris and drop it in there. Wow, debris picked up. But if you don't have access to a grabber, that's totally fine. You could use gloves or just be extra careful. We always recommend safety comes first. And this project's great because you're making your community cleaner while also helping researchers understand the origins of this problem. So that was my segment. You learned a little bit about citizen science and you learned how to participate in a specific project. And as a follow-up, I recommend going to the Debris Tracker website to see how they've used the data recently. And I also recommend exploring that data yourself if you have specific research questions, like if you want to understand plastic rings, for example, and how they're making their way out to the ocean, start participating. And if you do a cleanup locally, you could start looking for data patterns in your own community. So the future is bright with citizen science. I'll turn it back over to Marissa and Kelly for the Q&A.
Thank you. And we'll keep screen share off as we do this Q&A and start us off with some questions. And I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat. So anyone in the audience, as questions arise, feel free to type them in the chat, or you are also welcome to unmute, turn on your video. I see someone joining us already, and ask your question live. So I'm going to kick us off with just 1 or 2 questions to get us started, and then we'll turn it over to audience questions. All right. So the first question I'm going to turn to both Caroline and Veronica is kind of one about talking about the seriousness of climate change and environmental issues with youth, but in a hopeful and actionable way, right? I sometimes feel like it's such an enormous problem to tackle. And we know that, we're learning more and more that it's really like governmental, worldwide corporation decisions that will really help us make large steps in the right direction in the near future. So how do you present the seriousness of climate change and environmental issues in ways that feel hopeful and actionable for youth?
Definitely. I'll take this one really quick, and then I'm really interested in hearing what Veronica has to say. But so the thing about climate change is we're all so interconnected. So the beauty of citizen science is it gets to the hyper-local granularities of climate change. So one thing, we actually had a climate change podcast on SciStarter recently that you all might enjoy. And I have to give a shout out to my colleague Max Colley, because he really informed my thinking on this issue. But climate change is hyperlocal. So how you experience climate change may be way different from your neighbor just a few blocks down based on different environmental factors. So extreme heat may be worse for you than for them because they have more trees, or so on and so forth. So when you participate in citizen science projects, you're helping get at those very important hyperlocal differences that are apparent in climate change. So you can help researchers better assess the problem. And even if there are good faith disagreements on what the solutions can be, one thing you can tell youth, and one thing that's empowering for youth, is we all can agree that citizen science can be part of understanding the problem. And in terms of something like plastic pollution or coastal cleanups, those problems can be linked to climate change, right? Climate change can make various factors worse. Maybe the ocean's getting hotter, make it so they can't tolerate cigarettes, but as well, I'm making that up. I think Veronica might know more about the science of that. But participating in projects that get to other facets of the environment, like the debris tracker project, could also potentially shed some light on the interrelated factors with climate change. But Veronica, what do you think?
Agree with everything you said, and I'll just add, we discussed this sort of a little bit earlier, in the context of climate change and the interconnectedness of everything, and the idea that, it sometimes feels like this wicked issue that is hard to tackle, but there are actually ways in which we as individuals and as, classrooms or communities can work towards small actions that help the big picture. So linking it back again to something like plastic pollution, I might be saying something that a lot of folks already know, but plastic, the plastic that we use in our everyday life is a petroleum-based product, right? So fossil fuels don't just drive the oil and gas we might put in our cars or use for, other items, but it's also used in creating plastic products. And so in making choices to use less plastic, recycle plastic, I actually just read a newsletter this morning from the Ocean Guardians School, and one of the schools in, I think, one of the Carolinas actually managed to, it was a school in California. There are two stories, but there was a school in California that actually went to the school board and asked them to restrict the use of balloons in school events, because most balloons are made of plastic. Some of them fly up into the air and go off into the distance and become litter. And they worked collectively to ask the school to say, can we just say no more balloons at events? And the board agreed, and they sort of restricted balloon use at school events. And that action, that collective action of the students going to the board and asking for this small, this small change, this one thing to reduce pollution, is actually huge. It's huge in their community, right? When we're thinking about local actions, but also in the big picture, it's really huge too, because you think about the cascading effect that might have on other schools in other parts of the country, hearing about it and understanding why that school asked for them to not use balloons anymore, and saying hey, that makes a lot of sense. Can we do that here? So an action might feel small when it's just you doing it, or maybe just you and your family doing it. But honestly, there's a domino effect that ripples through, and you impact more people than you think you ever will. And that makes a big difference in what feels like a big problem ultimately. So sorry, I might have been rambling a little bit, but hopefully that all makes sense and sort of comes into this idea of everything's interconnected. Every action you do impacts the bigger picture.
That was great. Thank you. And one thing I wanted to touch upon is just both citizen science and Veronica, that example from California about those students, really touch upon this theme of student voice. And at NGCP, we know that research shows that when kids can use their voice and see an action come out of what they're advocating for. That's just a really powerful learning experience. And so finding ways that you can do that, whether it is through SciStarter and engaging in citizen science, or localized community advocacy around pollution in your area, I think that can prove to be such a meaningful and rich experience for youth. I'm going to see if there's anyone from our audience who's interested in joining us for a question. I know before we had one person who looked like they may have been ready.
I actually have a question for Veronica if we don't have any audience members yet.
Go for it.
All right. So Veronica, one thing that was moving for me about your presentation is it's obvious that you come from a very beautiful community. I was wondering if you had any words of advice for people who may not be on the preservation side of things, like maybe their community is already like really adversely impacted by pollution and litter. What would you tell those folks?
That is an excellent question. And I think about it from the perspective of, yes, preservation from the end of St. Paul Island, but restoration on other, in other places is possible. It's not impossible to restore, I grew up in New Jersey in like a very urban area, and it's not impossible to restore places from being like sort of an unhealthy ecosystem to a functioning ecosystem. It might not ever look the way it originally looked, but that doesn't mean you can't like replant trees, bring back wildflowers, attract pollinators. You mentioned a pollinator project, attract birds back to a place. And again, it's more of a, keeping the faith and making sure that like you sort of hold inside of you that like your actions make a difference no matter where you are or what you're doing. They're going to work towards that bigger picture of protecting the planet. I do like it's hard. It's not easy to watch something, even on St. Paul, where circling back to climate change. St. Paul has these giant cliffs. And the birds nest on the cliffs. They're huge. They're like hundreds of feet high. You can stand on the ground and like look up and your neck hurts because you can't see the top of the cliff. And in the past, the sea ice from the Arctic Ocean used to come all the way down towards St. Paul in the winter. And that was really important because, the Bering Sea is a wild place, and the storms are really strong, and the ice would protect the island and the cliffs from the big waves in winter storms. In the past, even in the time that I've been there, I've been working there since 2014, we've had a couple winters where the sea ice hasn't come down to St. Paul. And so the storms are hitting it really, really hard, hitting the edges of the island really, really hard. And, we're seeing erosion happen really quickly along the cliffs, and the seabirds are losing some of their nesting habitat. And even in that, watching that, which is hard to watch, I still have to remind myself like that we're trying to work towards like protecting that, even in preserving what is left at the moment, because that's really important. We got to fight to like, protect those animals and protect their homes, and, and it's worth doing everywhere. Yeah, I don't know if that, I could talk for hours, so I'm going to try and cut it off where where I think
super helpful. I think preservation versus restoration is such an amazing thing to address. Definitely.
Thank you both. Caroline, thank you for jumping in with that. Great question. So our next question, since we are here, we're talking about cleanup everywhere, but this webinar is in celebration of Coastal Cleanup Month, and we've shared some great resources and strategies for how to engage in Coastal Cleanup Month. But I'm wondering if if either of you have any other websites or resources you've used to engage in coastal cleanup with your youth that you would be able to share with our audience.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick. In terms of coastal cleanup, the Miss Earth USA organization is how I have done the majority of my cleanups. I I tend to couple citizen science with it. But if you're in any state or territory in the US, there's probably a Miss Earth Queen, Miss Earth USA Queen hosting a cleanup near you. So you can definitely participate alongside with her. But I would just follow the Marine Debris Tracker folks and find other cleanup organizations on SciStarter. I think that's really helpful so you can participate.
Second, Marine Debris Tracker app, 100%. If you're on the West Coast, you might want to look up COAST, COASST. They are, they originated as like seabird tracking, but they also have a marine debris component as well. And I can look up the website right now and drop it in the chat.
They're on SciStarter too.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, and they're an example, I think, of hyper-local because, they're limited to the Pacific Northwest. So if you search in the SciStarter project finder, I bet you, there's a cleanup investigation close to you. Debris tracker, you can do from any country on Earth, but COAST, Veronica, I'm so glad you brought COAST up because they're answering, very specific research questions like about like bird deaths and things like that. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, definitely give them a shot.
Yeah, they're awesome. I work with Jackie doing, we're trying to do more marine debris tracking on island besides our big cleanups, but we've been working with the seabird tracking for years now. So they're a really awesome group too.
Thank you. And I'll just call out that earlier in the chat, we had a couple folks sharing about citizen science projects they've done with youth and their programming. And what I gleaned from those is that they were able to connect with universities or like research firms in their area to, make sure that the data that their youth were collecting went into the proper sources and got shared with the proper people so that the university staff or the researchers could actually utilize that information and help it further their science. So that sounds like it could be a fruitful option too. If you are in an area that's close to a university or even a corporation that is doing, environmental action work or things like that, reaching out to them and seeing how you might be able to partner with them for a cleanup project could be a great thing to do as well. So thank you both. And I think we have time for maybe one more question. So the last question is, we've been celebrating coastal cleanup throughout this webinar, and we just talked about resources you could find, but how can we kind of garner support in the communities that we're in to engage in more cleanup projects or in more informal science learning or citizen science projects right where we live, anytime, any day?
Veronica, do you want to take that one first?
How can we participate anytime, any day? Let's see. Good question.
And how can you engage your community? How can you get your community members to kind of share in this work with you?
Yeah, sorry. My brain is going in a million directions to answer this. I think so. Here in Alaska, we engaging with community depends on where you are. So Anchorage is a much bigger town, so it's you're finding small pockets of community, and then when I go out to St. Paul, it's 400 people, and so you're sort of you've got a very specific niche group of people to engage with. And speaking from the perspective of smaller communities, a lot of it, a lot of community action around some of these issues, it just takes good outreach and connecting with folks and relationship building to get everybody engaged and caring about specific issues. And I think being a champion for a cause and being outspoken is one of the really great ways, and participating in things all the awesome projects on SciStarter, but also talking about it and getting other folks excited about it, I think is a really big part of that, of getting everybody together. So don't be afraid to chat with folks. I know my personal take on it is guilt tripping everybody about plastic when I talk about the seals and the seabirds, and I'm look at what you're doing. So that's my personal thing, but I don't really recommend everybody guilt tripping everybody else. Talk about how excited you are about the things that you're doing and why it's good to be part of it.
Yeah, I put a blog in the chat because Veronica, what you just said sparked in my mind. So surveys indicate these surveys were conducted by researchers at Yale, and the blog post links to it. But I'm going to put the little blurb in the chat. But surveys indicate that 72% of Americans report that they believe in climate change, but only 35% are talking about it regularly. I know that in terms of environmental problems that are related to climate change or other issues with the environment, I bet you the numbers are similar. So talking about it can be step one. You can do a guilt trip, or you could just describe what's going on in your community. That works too, or you can do both. And also for those of you who may be educators, or maybe just community leaders, maybe you have a Girl Scouts troop, maybe you're a student and you run a club at your school, just getting out there, the best way to learn is to do. So you could download that debris tracker app today, right? And you could have your student group go out and start tracking tomorrow. And if you do that and you want other attendees from your community to know about it, you can add that event to SciStarter and advertise it to SciStarter users in your area. So I would just get started, start on your own, tell your friends about it, maybe host an event in your community, and just do your best. It'll be fun, I promise, and you'll make a difference.
Thank you both. What a positive note to end on. I love that. So as we close out our webinar today, I'm going to ask Kelly to just share the last slide of that slide deck. NGCP just wants to let you know about some upcoming events we have before we close out. So thank you so much to Veronica and to Caroline for sharing with us today about the work you do in both your local communities and also about citizen science on kind of through a worldwide lens. It's really inspiring to hear about so many different ways we can get youth engaged and invested in helping to clean up their communities and do good for science. So as we close out, NGCP does have 3 upcoming webinars that you may be interested in joining us for. On September 14th, we have resources for after-school programs using the If-Then collection to support programming. On September 15th, just the day after that, we have a webinar titled Addressing STEM Stereotypes and Biases, Facilitating Challenging Conversations with Youth. And on October 5th, we'll be joined by some folks from the Tecnolochicas group, and they're talking about how their work is transforming the T, or technology, in STEM. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. We hope to see you again at a future webinar. And we are also asking you to please fill out a quick survey. These surveys help us to make sure that the webinars we're providing for you are relevant, of high quality, and also gives you an opportunity to suggest topics that we might bring to you as an audience in the future. The survey should also pop up when we end this webinar today. So with that, I will just say thank you everyone so much for your time. Thank you to Veronica and Caroline for your great presentations and for sharing your knowledge with all of us. And we hope to see you again at an NGCP webinar soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all. Bye.
Really appreciate it.